Chair now recognizes Mr. Mills.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you all for being here today. While I can applaud some of the work that actual USAID and State Department does, I think that we can identify the fact that there's been a continuous problem with the effectiveness, the implementation, and the actual oversight tracking of the grants and grantees that are actually going out there. Would we all agree with that? You wouldn't agree with that? Well, let me refer to you to the 2011 November OIG report that had to do with Afghanistan USAID grantee and sub-grantee programs, where they actually had found that where 67 hospitals and schools had been reported, the true findings was what? 3. 3 had been built out of that entire establishment. And you're going to tell me there's no problem with the subcommittee, the sub-grantees and grantees when you're talking about people like Creative Associates, DAI, Comonix, all the USAID implementing partners who have actually admitted that they couldn't track the funding once it went to a sub-grantee. That's not a problem?
Congressman, I'm not familiar with this 2011 report that you're citing.
It's actually the USAID OIG report, November of 2011. It actually talked about a program called ASI South, the Afghan Stabilization Initiative South. Are you familiar with any ASI programs or the Ramp Up, the regional Afghan municipality programs, or any of these types of programs?
No, sir, that was 10 years before I joined PRM.
Well, I can tell you that nothing has changed since then, and this is what I'll go for. This is a short history of grant deficiencies. You know, the State Department engages in increasingly complex acquisitions, procurement needed services, and the department needs to ensure that contractors and grantees properly chose, work and conducted monitored objectives, and have problems getting the effectiveness being contained. That was the OIG in 17. In 18, they talked about oversight weaknesses and mismanagement, also increased possibilities that the purpose of the instruments will not actually be met. That was 2018. In 2019, they actually talked about the department entities domestically and abroad did not consistently and adequately monitor contract performance, conduct through invoice reviews, or oversee grants and foreign assistance programs. That's 2019. I can continue to go on and provide this list, 2020, 21, 22, 23, and even as recently as this year when the OIG reported that whether its resources are used for core operations or destined for contracts, cooperative agreements, or grants that further foreign assist programs, the department's ability to manage its significant resources efficiently and effectively continues to remain a challenge for us. Sounds to me like the OIG continuously, regardless of whether or not it was 10 years prior to your coming or not, over the last 10 years that I can show right here, the OIG reports that you're still having problems tracking the utilization of the fundings and sub-grantee money. Is that not correct?
Sir, I could tell you that the OIG has pointed to PRM's processes as a model. I could tell you that the grants, or the cooperative agreements that we have with NGOs involve considerable oversight and monitoring. And I can talk about our strong collaboration with OIG, with the Office of the Special Inspector for Afghan Reconstruction. We welcome this oversight. We'd like to collaborate with them. We're always looking to improve our monitoring.
So you're familiar with SIGAR?
Yes.
And you're familiar that SIGAR's reported time after time the misuse and abuse of funding, American taxpayers' funding, like things, as an example, the KHPP Kandahar Helmand Power Project that resulted in $3+ billion.
Would the gentleman yield? I have a clarifying question.
Sure.
Would the gentleman clarify for me, are you referring to an OIG report done by the U.S. Agency for International Development, USAID?
And also the State Department OIG reports.
So I think it would be helpful. I think these are melding because you referenced a whole bunch of USAID reports. Obviously, this is a State Department panel.
I understand that, but the State Department does actually provide the oversight for USAID. Am I not correct in this in some way?
I understand that. I think it would be helpful because there's confusion and melding with the questioning. If you could just clarify for the witnesses which reports you're talking about.
For the Vice Chairman here, do we not, when we appropriate things under the State and Foreign Ops budget, does that not include State Department and USAID, and the State Department ultimately has the oversight of that funding?
But there are different OIGs.
I understand that,
yes.
But both OIGs have reported that there is actual an issue with the grantee and sub-grantee programs when it comes to
and what I'm asking the gentleman to clarify is when he's asking questions, if you could just be more specific.
Let's go ahead and talk about SIGAR.
Okay.
Most of those
I'm
were
not
in
debating the
reference to that
gentleman.
to
I'm
begin.
just asking if the gentleman will clarify
reclaiming my time.
which OIG
Reclaiming
they're
my
referring
time.
to.
Let me ask this question to make it easy. If a grantee fails to comply with the terms of its grant agreement or otherwise violates U.S. law, is the grantee suspended from receiving further U.S. funding?
Yes, and I can give you examples of when we've done that in PRM.
Okay, can you explain how that process works?
So we have a very robust system of monitoring and evaluation that includes written reports, performance reports, financial reports, desk audits, interviews, site visits, as I described in my testimony. And when, in the course of conducting this oversight, we find that a recipient of U.S. funding, one of our cooperative agreements, is failing to meet the benchmarks that we have agreed on, then we have suspended funding. We did that in
So can you tell me where we're at then? And I appreciate that. With the implementer of the atheism grant that was referred for suspension, where is that now?
Mr. Mills?